The judge says they ignored an order given months ago to return $17,000 that was confiscated after a warrantless search of a man's rental car.
Dallas police tweeted this picture, praising the work of a police canine after he helped officers seize more than $100,000 at Love Field Airport. The post quickly went viral, with many people asking why it's a crime for someone to have this much money. And others pointed out the traveler who had the cash wasn't arrested.
First, applaud you on your driving. You drive great. You're driving really slow. It appears that you're trying to drive safely under the speed limit. I appreciate that. Would you give me permission to search your vehicle today? That's okay with you? Okay, perfect.
So that money right there is for my 2 daughters.
Okay. Are you going to give it to them on this trip or no? Or that's just your nuts?
That's my money and my two daughters' money and nobody else's.
Even if ultimately their case is dismissed or they're found not guilty or the case otherwise goes away, the federal government can still keep that money.
Welcome back to Legal Dissent, where we evaluate your constitutional rights before they're taken away. Highway robbery is a common term that found its origin back in the Middle Ages when mass marauders would waylay travelers on the road and steal everything of value. As society progressed, this type of criminal conduct all but disappeared. Or did it? Civil forfeiture is a process in which law enforcement seizes assets that are allegedly associated with criminal activity. And then those officers keep or sell it to support the law enforcement agency that made that seizure. Obviously, officers are incentivized greatly by making these seizures to bring in a payday for the office. On February 19th of this year, former Marine Stephen Lara was on his way to visit his teenage daughters when he was pulled over by an officer for allegedly driving too close to the vehicle in front of him.
Hey, good morning, Trooper Brown, Nevada Highway Patrol. How are you today? I'm doing great. Hey, the reason I'm stopping you, we have a special enforcement campaign going on. We're trying to educate drivers about violations they may not realize they're committing, but we're seeing a big increase in crashes out here. First, applaud you on your driving. You drive great. You're driving really slow. It appears that you're trying to drive safely under the speed limit. I appreciate that. I just want to talk about your following distance, especially around commercial vehicles. Came up behind a red and blue tanker truck. A little bit too close behind him before he made that lane change to go around him. I know it's sitting over there. I was waiting for you to trying to give you room to get over there because I know people like to jam you in that lane.
I'm sure keep coming out of there and people are driving fast. So
yep, absolutely. Yeah, you got to navigate that, but a little too close to him before you went around him. Okay. As you pass those semi trucks and you came back down to make that lane change in front of that semi truck, too close. You were less than a second in front of him when you entered that lane. You were only 1 second in front of him when you fully occupied that lane. If something were to happen to you, man, that semi-truck would plow right through you. So we're seeing a bunch of crashes out here, just trying to educate people.
This officer went to the ticky-tack school of traffic violations, but Steven made one huge mistake when the officer asked this question.
Would you give me permission to search your vehicle today? That's okay with you? Okay, perfect. Hey, Steph, this is a consent to search form, man. You said you'd give me permission to search your vehicle.
I don't have anything to hide from you guys.
I appreciate that, man. Do me a favor, just read through it. If you agree with it, I'm just going to ask you to sign and date it, okay? Yeah. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask us, all right?
Never, ever allow law enforcement to search without a warrant, especially if you have nothing to hide. The officers go through the entire car and find zero contraband, but they do find something that piques their interest.
All right, man, so here's the deal, all right? I think you're a good guy.
I'm a good guy.
So how much cash is that?
About 100 grand.
100 grand, okay. So, as you know, right, I'm a vet, he's a vet, you're a vet. It's not illegal to carry currency, have currency.
No, sir, it's not.
It does, though, make us ask some questions on why someone has 100,000. I can understand why you don't trust banks, especially in this day and age right now.
Discipline and lots of savings.
What's that?
Discipline and lots of savings.
So with that being said, if you're willing to talk to me about it a little bit, I'd like to. I know you got a bunch of receipts in there. I just want to make sure that it is your currency, that it's not being used for nefarious activities, right? That's not money laundering or something like that going on. That's the questions that it raised, that potentially money laundering or something like that's going on. So
that money right there is for my 2 daughters.
Okay. Are you going to give it to them on this trip or no? Or that's just your nuts?
That's my money and my two daughters' money and nobody else's.
Okay.
I take that money right there and I buy them things, put food on the table, I buy them clothes with that right there.
Fair enough.
And that's me looking at you man to man in your eyes and telling you exactly what that is.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
I got some questions I'm going to want to ask you here in a few minutes. If you're willing to answer them, I'd appreciate that.
I have nothing to hide from you.
I appreciate that. Give me a few seconds. I'll make a couple phone calls, right? And then we'll start leaving those receipts and stuff like that.
Sure.
As long as it's, which it is, right? Your money and stuff like that, then we'll get you on down the road.
Yeah, you can look at those account numbers. If you want to call Bank of America, you want to call any of those banks, ask them whose account number that is.
I believe it. I believe it, right? I gotta do my job, and my bosses look at what I'm doing and make sure that I'm doing my due diligence. So
I got to pick up my daughters at Portola at 4 o'clock p.m. So as long as I can make it there,
I think we'll get you there by 4 o'clock. No problem there. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
The officers discuss their opinions on the cash before sending in the canine.
What are your thoughts, dude?
I'm kind of leaning more towards it's odd, but
It's odd, but it's not packaged
it's
like
not.
normal.
No, and he's answering the questions. There's receipts here, and
I would like to put the dog on the fence, you know.
Okay.
Those are all zeroed out. I mean, keep some of them out. It jives with the story.
Yeah, I mean everything lines, as odd as it is, everything lines up.
With the travel story and stuff like that. And I'm gonna get out my scale and weigh that.
After agreeing that there is nothing inherently illegal about carrying cash, they decide to weigh the cash and then have the dog search it to see if it will alert on the cash, which it does. Despite canine units being notoriously inaccurate and unreliable, plus 90% of all United States currency carries trace amounts of cocaine. Therefore, a dog alert to currency without other supporting evidence is not enough to grant an officer probable cause for a crime, and despite this, the officer still sees the money.
What we're gonna do, I believe there's drug proceeds, dog alerted to it.
Drug proceeds?
Yeah, it's very common, sir. We get people that are trafficking large quantities of marijuana from Northern California to all states east, even from Reno.
Sir, I can tell you right now,
I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, okay? We're going to seize it today, but that doesn't mean we're the final judgment on it. It's going to go through the DEA, okay? So the DEA will contact you, and the DEA will provide you with a means to fight it. You're going to have to provide your pay stubs. You're going to have to provide your other receipts and stuff like that, okay?
Just want to let you know, I know you're just doing your job. That money I worked really hard for. The money that I have in my jacket is only $3. I have money to pay for my kids, my bills, my hotel. We're going to get that car back to Texas. So, I know you're just doing your job. I don't know what to do. I'm probably going to be stuck here unless somebody sends me some money.
Okay.
No way fighting for my children this week. To get back to Texas. So, like I said, I know you're just doing what you feel is best, but
like you know, my sergeant. It sounded like my sergeant talked to you about that a little bit and told you what was going on and everything along those lines. So,
I just wanted to tell you, Officer Brown, I mean, you're taking money out of my kids' mouths.
Sorry.
Or you're taking fruit out of my kids' mouths.
Like I said, we believe right now that this is drug proceeds, illicit currency.
Well, I'm going to prove to you that it's not.
Perfect.
Without probable cause of a crime, the government just seized $100,000 from a man who was not even given a traffic ticket. He is now forced to prove his own innocence to a group of mass marauders who waylaid him and took everything of value. The Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution is most known for the protection it guarantees from cruel and unusual punishments, but it also safeguards your right to be free from excessive fines. So how is civil forfeiture legal? An Indiana man challenged this in 2019.
We first met Tyson Timbs last year, walking into a Grant County courtroom to admit he's not perfect, but he doesn't deserve to lose his car.
Our system is supposed to be about rehabilitation. And that's not what any of this is.
It's a battle he's been fighting for 8 years. In 2013, police arrested him for selling heroin. He pleaded guilty, got probation, and paid a few $100s in fines. Police also took his Land Rover.
This case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court in Timbs v. Indiana, applying the Eighth Amendment's protection to the states in civil and rem forfeiture cases. However, governments are able to continue seizing property by filing the case against the property, not the person, if they have reason to believe it has been used in facilitating a crime, pushing the burden of proof onto the owner of the property to establish that the property had not been used in criminal conduct. The Department of Justice claims that this is important to deprive criminals of income, but in reality, it just redistributes wealth from the people to a highly incentivized government agency while ignoring due process rights. This practice is perfectly legal in 46 states, and only North Carolina, New Mexico, Nebraska, and Maine have eliminated civil forfeiture procedures. Both of these men in these situations were able to get their property back. Steve and Lara gave this interview earlier this year.
How long did it take between the seizure and the return, Ben?
So Stephen's money was seized in February. It wasn't until we filed a lawsuit at the end of August that the government even said anything to Stephen after the fact.
Wow. Tell us about the state lawsuit, the one that's still, the federal lawsuit's been dismissed, I assume, because you got the money.
That's correct.
So tell us about the state lawsuit. He's entitled to compensation just for what they did to him, and the state needs to be taught a lesson that it has to follow its own laws. It can't use a federal loophole.
Absolutely. So the state lawsuit is ongoing. As you know, litigation like this takes a long time. So we're still waiting for the state to respond to the lawsuit. But yes, as you said, Stephen is entitled to compensation. He had to figure out, how to get to California and back without money. He deserves to be compensated for that trouble he suffered. And most importantly, Stephen is looking out for everybody else who's in a similar situation and wants the Nevada courts to say that the Nevada Highway Patrol and other state officials cannot do this to anybody else.
This society is supposed to be built upon the premise of justice and innocence until proven guilty. But continually we are seeing government agencies more interested in requiring you to prove your innocence as they take your freedom and your property with very little due process. Stephen was stopped on the side of the road with no reasonable articulable suspicion of criminal activity. His property was seized despite the fact that he had receipts proving that the money was in fact his. It is not illegal to carry large amounts of cash. It is not wrong to carry large amounts of cash. And Americans should not have to prove to the government that they own their own property. What do you think? Should officers be allowed to seize property if they believe it might have been used in a crime without any evidence? Should the government be required to compensate individuals who have had their property seized without due process? Let us know in the comments below. And remember that no matter who you are, you have value and you have rights. Do not be afraid to use them, and we'll see you next time right here on Legal Dissent.